Hello everyone, it's Lewis P here. So I hope everyone's having an awesome day, night, wherever you are in the world. We're going to be doing the second part of my World of Warcraft, Vanilla World of Warcraft versus live modern World of Warcraft as well. So I hope you enjoy it. Assuming that because you're on the second video now, you've already watched the first one. If you haven't watched the first one, probably go back to that one and, just so you understand where I'm coming from. And there's going to be a bit more context for you guys. So that's great. And just to give you a quick recap of what we discussed in part one, we spoke about the elitism between the vanilla and live community, the demographics, the differences between the male and female ratios, how it's a lot more, prominent in the live world. There's not as many just because of the total demographics altogether. The time commitment required to play both games at a very high level, and not even high, even just to a medium to decent level. And I got through about 20% of what I really wanted to get through when it comes to PvP, because that's really dear to me, just because I was a dedicated PvP and a PvE player. Either way, I will probably dedicate an entire video just to that because it's so fun to me. So in saying that, let's jump straight into this video. What we're going to be discussing is a few points. One is going to be technology, two is going to be game mechanics, three will be the world and what it is compared to what it was back in the day, and also the design philosophy around what the game currently is, how it came when it went from vanilla to very much live, and what it has been since Wrath of the Lich King. Now, if you have any opinions on this, please, I read everything in the comments, and you know that I reply to most things. So please just shoot them in the comments. If you have opinions on this, I really want to hear them, because then I learn, you learn, we all grow together. So it's only a good thing. So let's get straight into it. So the first point has to be tech, guys. Now, to give you a TLDR already, the tech in live thrashes, completely crushes the vanilla tech in every single way. So there's no more arguments there. I've read a few arguments saying the tech back then was better. No, it wasn't, guys. I'm sorry. Not a chance. It's like comparing, Super Mario 64 versus Super Mario Odyssey. Like, you can't, and even then that's being too light on it, because Super Mario Odyssey had like maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 years to develop itself. And that's being modest. I maybe say 2 years. Let's give it 2 years to develop. Whereas WoW's had since 2004, 2005, 2006, all the way to 17 to build out the same code, the same, infrastructure, the same basic game to adapt and grow with. Updating textures, updating abilities, updating, server performance, all of that. They've had all that time to, adapt, adjust, upgrade, and ultimately give what the players want. So from a technology perspective, guys, live WoW, modern WoW, World of Warcraft is much better than vanilla WoW. So the next point I need to bring up is game mechanics. Now, there are so many different game mechanics, and this can be an entire video on its own, but I'll just bring up some of the core points that I really missed, and some of the points that I wish they would, somewhat reintroduce. I know they're still there to a certain extent, but I don't feel it anymore. And that's probably because of a few reasons, like people are just generally improving at the game, the key binding mechanics, the add-ons and such that have helped improve this, process for players. But I sort of miss it, because it created that extra depth in vanilla WoW. So the first part of game mechanics I really want to discuss, and this has been brought up in the comments quite a bit as well, is threat. Now, threat is an amazing mechanic in the game, especially from a PvE perspective. It only exists in PvE. So yeah, threat. Back in the day, I was always pulling off my tank. Now, I hated doing it. I was a rogue, so I could vanish instantly as soon as they'd auto. They wouldn't even get the auto in. I'd just have that threat meter go off and say, oh, you're taking threat. Threat is amazing because it creates so much more depth between the DPS. It creates a relationship between DPS and tanks. Right now, both feel very isolated to me. The only way a DPS is actually pulling from a tank in the way I think of it now is if the DPS, attacks that mob or pulls that mob first. Whereas, back in the day, yeah, that tank can still pull the mob first, but if that fireball does a crit, it's going to pull straight away. And that's why you had to manage your certain abilities. You had to use different rank spells back in the day. There was so much more in-depth depth mechanics to that game. It was much harder for the casual player, but I personally really enjoyed that aspect of the game. And that applies to, you know, multi-level heals. You know, I played a priest as well back in the day. You know, I'd have like 3 or 4 ranks of heal on my bars, and that was just one spell, like rank 1, rank 3, rank 4, or whatever they were. I don't remember right now. So different ranks within you know, the spell books. That was huge. Another one was gear dependency. Now, unfortunately, in the game right now, everything is about gear score. I don't know when they released that. I don't recall when. I know gear score's always been around since the dawn of time, but it wasn't an actual like number that they showed. But gear score for me has really ruined what it means to differentiate skill within the game. I've seen players, unfortunately, I personally don't like gear score at all. I don't think it should be there, because now what people ask is, what is your gear score, as opposed to what have you done? There's a major difference between someone with like a very high gear score that really doesn't know what they're doing versus someone with, you know, a decent gear score, but, you know, has been in like top guilds. Probably a casual player, but, you know, they're casual hardcore in a way. Gear score is another massive thing, another game mechanic that they should not have introduced, in my opinion at least. Yes, it's an okay indicator to tell, you know, where players are in their, you know, game lifespan, but when you're deciding based on gear score and who's worthy or not, even when it's like by 1 or 2 gear score, that's a complete joke to me, unfortunately. And I'm really sad that the state of WoW has come down to, you know, picking members based on their gear score. I really dislike that. And not that it's not a big deal for me. I normally have the highest gear score. It just sucks because I know a lot of players that are really, really good at the game and that can pull better, you know, damage, more threat, more, you know, tankage. They're just much more aware of what's happening on around them with a lower gear score than those that have a high gear score. But those people with the high gear score are often favored because of just that silly number that exists. So gear score is another really, really sad case that's happened versus Vanilla WoW. Vanilla WoW, your reputation is what mattered, not your gear. A perfect example of that was actually my first ever video. You saw I was a level 59 rogue with 30 level 40 gear, and I was versing a level 60 guy with clear, you know, blue 60 gear. Maybe he even had a few epics, and I took him down because of the outplay. I actually outplayed him. That doesn't exist anymore. You'll never ever see a level 109 kill 110. Like, it's just like rubbing the guy's back. You're just not doing anything to that 110 player if you're 109. And that's a really sad case of the game, I believe. So the next aspect has to be the world. And does the game currently feel like an actual world? Does it feel big, you know, versus what it felt in Vanilla WoW? Now, the easiest way for me to talk about this would be talking about live and then Vanilla WoW. So currently the way the game works right now is you have the game and there are teleports everywhere, and you can basically teleport wherever you want on the map instantaneously. You don't really have to fly anywhere. Because it's all automated, and that's fine. And a lot of players like that because a lot of people don't want to put like a stupid amount of time into the game and all of that. And with that comes a loss. You lose something from that. You lose, you know, a certain element to the game, and that is, does the world feel like a World of Warcraft anymore? And to me, not really. It feels like the world of Instance Craft. That's probably a better term to describe what World of Warcraft is today in live and modern WoW. It's literally World of Instance Craft. It feels like everything is very much an instance, and you know, you're zoning in and you're loading in. You probably see more loading screens now today than back in the day. And I remember one of the philosophies back in the day for Vanilla WoW was to avoid loading screens. But either way, it's loading screens for time, which I don't mind. But the cost of that is you lose what it means to have a massive world and make it feel epic. The only time you actually feel like that, it would be at the dead first day of an expansion. That is the time, that feeling that everyone has on like the first, second day, you know, while they're leveling in the new expansion on a new world, on a new continent, is every day in Vanilla WoW. Because the game just feels so much more larger. No one had their flying mounts back in the day. No one had their epic speed mounts. I don't even know if they're called epics anymore. They're just called mounts. And no one had that. You get that 100 speed mount at level 40, right? The game goes to 110. So it's Very different, very different. Back in the day, I remember, right now I'm leveling, right? So this world feels huge to me. I'm in a vanilla server, by the way. This world feels massive because it feels like I'm moving slow. There's not that level 1 mount to level 20, and then the level 20 mount to 40, and then the 40 to the flying mount and level 60. That doesn't exist in vanilla. So the best thing is it felt like an actual world, and it felt like you could really run into anyone, and it feels epic when you run into someone. Right now it's like, oh, you're just flying over everyone, or you're being instanced to a different city and then to a different zone, and then you're taking a ship to an area or whatever it is. You're taking a portal to whoever. I don't really mind that anymore. A lot of players really hate that because it removes what it means to be a world, but a lot of players like that. I actually prefer it. Actually, it's not that I'm indifferent. I'm more leading towards, yes, I like the portals because it saves me time. And as you know from my first video, time is super important to all of us. But if you're a kid and you really want to be exposed, yeah, that's, unfortunately, you're going to miss out on that. So, flying mounts, dungeon finders, instant level transmissions. It's crazy. It's insane, which is great. Good for us. But let's go on to the next point. Would have to be dungeon finders and raid finders. Now this is where the debates can really kick in, and how everyone has their opinions on this, and everyone's pretty valid for what they want, and there's no right or wrong answer here. So please let me know in the discussion what you think of dungeon finders. But ultimately, dungeon finders, for me at least, it just took away what it meant to have gear. So gear is very easy to obtain now. Legendaries are easy to obtain relatively. Like I see people with so many legendaries and it's like, big deal. You have a legendary. No one cares anymore. Back in the day, you saw Thunder Fury or whatever it is, Thunderstorm, whatever that item was, the lightning two-hander. You're like, holy moly, this is huge. I never see this. You saw the weapon from Ragnarok. That weapon, you just go nuts. You're like, wow, what am I looking at? This guy has put so much time, so much effort. This guy's an absolute beast. I've never said that once in vanilla in any of the expansions to date, since probably Wrath of the Lich King. And in Wrath of the Lich King, you had the Blades of Azzinoth. And they were probably the last real legendaries to me, at least. The rest were just a joke in my mind, free mounts on your whatever. So dungeon finders, they ruined what it means to have gear, but they did speed up the process of getting gear for everyone, and also everyone being able to see the content, because you could just go through that list. It's like dungeon 1, dungeon 2, dungeon 3. You go through all of them, you experience all the content, which is fine. It's also, we can go into game philosophy, late game versus late game content, and we'll actually talk about this as a final point as well. So dungeon finders exist. They didn't exist back in the day. You had to run to your dungeons. You couldn't auto into them, which is fine. I like dungeon finders because, time is important. And there's a lot more to, the world. There's a lot more, questing and how easy it is to quest. And, back in the day, I couldn't kill more than 2 mobs at a time. And then today, you're just wiping them all just like one shot, which is insane. It just makes that leveling process so much faster. That paladin that you saw in the first video, or the first like 0.1 video, that was level like 79 paladin with like 20 hours playtime, whereas my rogue, my level 59 rogue, had 6 days playtime. More than 150 hours playtime, and that's just to get there. So that difference is massive. I prefer live because it's easier for everyone. Now, the last point I really want to just bring up, because I know I'm running out of time, I'm sorry guys, but is the design philosophy of the game, where it was and where it is currently. So in Vanilla WoW, you could really do whatever you wanted in the game. There were invisible walls that you could go through. There were different parts of doing quests. There were thousands of different ways you could do even specific quests. There were just so many different ways of doing things, because the game was actually much harder. There's a different route every time you were trying to get to an item for a quest, or there were so many different routes of dungeons. If you look at UBRS, LBRS, if you're going in there fresh and you don't have a pre-understanding of what's happening, you could go left or right and not know what you're doing, right? And that's not a problem to me. I like that. I like chaos. I always talk about chaos in games. I think it's the best thing in the world, because when games are chaotic, they're fun, and it means people don't know what they're doing. But we won't go through that yet. I'll make a separate video on chaos versus structure. And then what happened around BC? Sorry, not BC. Maybe Wrath. The whole they merged with Activision, right? So, and this is going to spark a bit of debate, and whatever, I don't care. It's good. Talk about it. What happened was they merged with Activision, and then they said, okay, well, let's start applying this to the casuals a bit more. Let's start applying a theme park design philosophy to the game. And when you hire new people, you have people that have copped a lot of flack over the past years, and you can kind of understand why they took the meat of it. Developers like Ghostcrawler, they copped it. Those poor guys, man, they're just doing a job at the end of the day. And when they start introducing very, very casual focused philosophies into the game, the theme park approach to the game, then ultimately what happens is you piss off a lot of players that are hardcore. Fortunately, however, they are a minority, so you don't have to worry too much about them. I know Blizzard do care about their minority, but we gotta now admit, guys, the game is very much a theme park. You start at a zone, you end at a zone almost every single time. And the only variance to that is you decide which zone you finish. But other than that, there is a definite gear progression way to level. You do your dungeon finders. Once you do your dungeon finders, you go into heroics. Once you finish your heroics, you go into mythic. And along that way, you're playing the game, and there's definitely that way of doing things. Whereas back in the day, and obviously that's dictated. And the way they've dictated this, and I touched on this previously, is through gear score. So you're not going to get into a mythic group with a low gear score, even though you could do it. Let's say you're playing a tank, right? You don't really need, like a warrior tank where abilities are based on prevention rather than reduction. You don't really need high gear score to play a warrior tank, but everyone thinks you do because that's the way the game is played right now. So they've literally dictated this theme design approach within the player base because of this, and it actually slows people down, unfortunately. So there's a lot more I can discuss about the theme design approach, but I'm currently out of time. Guys, I'm going to make a part 3. I'll probably jump onto these points a bit more. I'll answer a few more of your questions, but there's a lot more I can talk about with respect to the game, Vanilla World of Warcraft versus Live WoW. So if you like this content, guys, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. Please discuss in the comments what you think. I read over all your posts, and if you write a really cool response, I'll even give it the love heart. I do that stuff. And I read everything, by the way, so I'd really like to get your feedback on these points that I've provided. By all means, go as far as you want, write as much as you want. I normally read everything at night anyway. I will most likely reply or engage with your posts because I have a philosophy in my mind that I should engage with my viewers as much as possible. So, thank you very much, everyone. I'm so sorry this video is long, but anyway, if you got through it, you guys rock. Stay awesome. Lewis P out.